You know what?
You're good.
No, you know what?
What?
I didn't downsize the screen, so
it's okay.
I couldn't.
Oh, don't do anything. I can cut all of this off.
You cut all this off?
Yep. I'll cut all of it off.
What did I do? I'm going to downsize this. All right. I'm blocking my own view.
Oh, you're
Okay.
fine. I'll just chop all of it off.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exclusive Motor Age interview with an industry expert. I'm Larry Silvey, publisher of custom content for Motor Age, and today I am pleased to be speaking with Ben Johnson, the Director of Product Management for Mitchell1. As such, he is responsible for managing Mitchell1's portfolio of products for the motor vehicle industry. For those of you who know Ben, you know that as a former shop owner, Ben brings firsthand knowledge to Mitchell1. He maintains several ASE certifications and belongs to the Society of Automotive Engineers International. To say the least, he's very active in the industry. For example, he is the immediate past president of the Equipment and Tool Institute Executive Committee. He also serves on the Auto Care Association Technology Standards Committee and chairs the Multi-Association Telematics Task Force. Ben, welcome. Thanks for being with us today. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and as you can see, I'm in my favorite place, the Mitchell1 garage. So nice to be with you.
Well, every shop owner and technician is acutely aware of the fact that time is money, Ben. Everything they do hinges on getting each job done right the first time in the least amount of time. Some are better than others at doing this, but it is not an intuitive process. In fact, with the complexity of vehicles and the voluminous amount of data related to vehicles, it necessitates every shop and tech to work more efficiently. Mitchell1, of course, has been a leader for many years in helping shops achieve that. I wanted to talk to Ben today to see what the latest developments are in achieving the highest level of efficiency possible, thereby saving techs and shops time. Ben, let's get to it then. A lot of techs use ProDemand, which is an online solution for repair, maintenance, and diagnostics, and it directly addresses all of these in terms of speed and accuracy. And ProDemand has been out there for a while now, yet I wonder how many people know how to get the most out of it. From your experience and customer feedback, what are the must-know items about ProDemand people should be taking advantage of?
Well, it's a great question, Larry. You know, and as you said, a lot of people use ProDemand, and what's interesting is that people use ProDemand for a lot of different things. So, you know, it is a diagnostic reference tool. It is a diagnostic assistant for those people that are stuck on a problem and just can't seem to solve it. It's also just a reference tool for people that want to know what kind of oil and how much to put in the car. You know, when we hear a lot of feedback from our technicians, from the power users, if you will, I think that the top things that they appreciate are the recent OneSearch enhancements, which include a top 10 view when you identify the vehicle, and probably our new ProView feature. If you like, I could show you kind of how that works real quick.
Oh, that'd be great, please.
Let me share my screen real quick and see if I can't. Okay, Larry, you should be seeing a screen come up with it looks like the home page of the ProDemand product.
Yep, got it. Looks good.
So one thing that's interesting about, you know, information systems, and one thing that we wrestled with in the ProDemand development is that most people in any information product, the first thing you really have to do is identify the vehicle you're working on, and then go ask that information or that product for certain information about that vehicle. Last year, we kind of turned that around a little bit, and what you'll see here is the first thing that I have to do is select the vehicle, which I'm about to do. But as soon as I select this vehicle, I like to kind of relate these things, by the way, to real-world experiences, so bear with me. The example that I've chosen here is I actually had a friend who's a technician who had an issue with a 2011 Toyota Tacoma, and it stuck in my head because it was a little bit odd. The complaint from the customer was that it had a noise coming out of, or it seemed to be coming out of the air conditioner. The noise varied when you would increase the fan speed. So he was pretty convinced it was a blower motor. So what he really wanted to do was look up, how to replace the blower motor in this Tacoma. So following my example here, the first thing we did is identify the vehicle, and then when we click use this vehicle, instead of now necessarily typing in blower motor, what you're presented with is this list of information that comes not from ProDemand per se, but from the industry at large. And it talks about, just starting from the left column, this is a list of the most commonly replaced components within the Mitchell purview of a whole bunch of shop management systems and technician input and other things. These are the top things that are replaced on this Tacoma. And then the next column over tells you the common, most diagnostic trouble codes that are ever reported for this car. The next column over is common symptoms. And then the final column is actually just what is looked up in ProDemand most frequently. So when you look at that list, it looks a little bit ominous, but what it's really designed to do is there's a very good chance, since these are the common things, that the reason your car is in the bay may be represented here, and you could just do a quick glance. And in fact, in this case, we looked at the common symptoms, and the second one down says noise heard. Well, that's a pretty ambiguous term, but we thought that might be interesting. Let's just click on it real quickly. And if you look at this, now it brings us back the information about noise heard. The top area is the OE information that could be related to it. The bottom, where it says SureTrack results, are the actual things that have been reported from the industry. And the second listed thing down says noise heard replaced cabin air filter. Well, we thought that's interesting because that's right by the blower motor, and it could certainly be associated with our problem. And when we clicked on that, what you see is the complaint, which was similar to our customer's complaint. They heard a noise. But what they did was they actually thought it was the blower motor, pulled that out, but discovered that there was a lot of debris on the cabin air filter that was actually rubbing on the fan of the blower motor and causing this noise. The top graph that you're looking at is the common replaced parts for this symptom, and the cabin air filter, you see, actually tends to be replaced on this vehicle around, mostly around 50,000 miles. Well, this particular Toyota had about 83,000 miles on it. So we said, man, well, that's what my technician said. Well, let me just pop that filter out very quickly. And he, in fact, did, and found that that's exactly what the problem was. So he didn't pull the blower motor. He just used this experience. We've talked about it in the past. It's almost like when I owned my shop, you had a network of people that you would bounce hard to identify problems off of. Well, this is just like having that at your fingertips without having to make the phone call. So he was able to very quickly identify and fix this, and you entered this discussion with, they're selling time, and time is money, and this saved him from having to pull a blower motor out and then put the blower motor back in just to replace the cabin air filter. Now, the other interesting thing is, let's take it in another direction very quickly. Let's just say that he had proceeded on, didn't pay attention to the noise heard there, which is industry experience, but typed in blower motor, and as you'll see, ProDemand tries to predict what it is that you're looking for. So we're just going to say blower motor and hit enter. And then you get to the OE information that talks about how to inspect it, how to replace it, how to do all those things. But in here also is, you notice, and this is kind of an interesting thing that ProDemand does. You see this button up to the upper right that says TSBs and then the number 2 next to it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, in almost any information product, or from the NHTSA website and other places, you can get a list of technical service bulletins for most vehicles. But and we used to always train our technicians that before you get really involved in a diagnostic repair, look for TSBs to see if there's an engineered-in problem that you need to be aware of. But what's happened is there's so many of these bulletins now that going through that is like going through an encyclopedia, and to find the bulletin that's applicable to your particular problem is daunting at best. What we've done is we've isolated or mapped those technical service bulletins to the actual components that we're talking about. So these TSBs, when we click on this, are only going to be associated with this blower motor, and in fact, the OE, Toyota in this case, has a technical service bulletin for abnormal blower motor noise. So if you click on that, it actually turns out that for, I think it says 2005 to 2011 Tacomas, they had some issues with blower motors causing noises, and they superseded the part number with a new one. So had in my particular case here, the cabin air filter did solve the problem, but had it not, and we went to replace that blower motor, it's pretty important to make sure we're ordering the new part number that's not likely to give us the repeat problem, instead of maybe finding the old part number still on the shelf somewhere. So those are just a couple of areas where our power users really use ProDemand to save time in solving those odd problems.
Well, Ben, that's very impressive, to say the least. And I guess, you know, there's another side to this. That's really great for people doing diagnostics, but how about the more average user? For example, someone who just needs to know what type of oil to put in their car.
Great question. We talked about that. We've got all varieties of people that use this product. So let's stay with the same vehicle for a minute. And remember, when I identified that vehicle, I got presented with this list of lookups. Well, what I didn't talk about was on the right part of the screen, there is a list of items. And if I click on the show button or the show link at the top, it kind of expands this out to show me what I have available. This is what we call our quick access toolbar. And in here, you can look up things like common specs and procedures, diagnostic trouble codes, things like that. You had mentioned specifically fluid capacities, or what type of oil to put in. Well, if I click on that, it shows me all the different types of capacities. I've scrolled down here to the engine oil, and it talks about what types to put in, what the capacities are, all those sorts of things. So in this case, if that's all I was looking for, I would have identified my vehicle, been presented with that screen with the top 10s on it, and just made one more click to get to that capacity. Same thing, we get a lot of requests, you know, we were just talking about technical service bulletins. Here's where I can get that laundry list of every bulletin for this vehicle, and we take the extra step of categorizing those bulletins by, you know, by category here, by how many are with charging systems or clutches or air conditioning or what have you. Another very popular one that we had requested is tire fitment. Very quickly, you can look up the tires that came on the vehicle, what the options were, and things like that. So for somebody, you know, that just needs to use ProDemand in this particular instance as a reference tool, we've tried to make those things, you know, as close to one click away as we can.
Well, it looks like you've been very busy. You know, putting this together, and those are very, very helpful. But it's pretty easy to talk about features, right? So if we could just step back for a moment and think like a tech thinks, I want to run a couple of scenarios by you, if that's okay. Let's say I'm a technician working on a 2001 Chevy Tahoe with a 5.3 V8 engine. The check engine lamp was on, and I see a couple of DTCs. I have a PO442 and a PO155. I cleared the codes and drove the vehicle. The PO442 has returned, so I'm diagnosing that. How do I get the most out of ProDemand in that situation?
That is an excellent scenario. I'm glad you brought that up, and the reason that I'm really happy about that is you addressed something that really plagues a lot of technicians. It plagued me when I was in the business, and we hear about it all the time, and that is what is the best way to deal with multiple trouble codes. Because, as you said, you've had trouble codes on this vehicle, and you did what a lot of technicians do. They clear them because you don't know really which one is most relevant. And then the one that comes back is the one you assume that the customer is most concerned about, and you go through the steps to resolve that, and you're still, it's kind of in the back of your mind always, is that other code going to reappear at some point? And then it's going to be, even though you did the right job, it's going to be perceived perhaps as a comeback. So let's take a look at that in ProDemand. So the first thing I've done here is I've identified my Chevy Tahoe again, 5.3 engine. Here's the top 10 lists that pertain to that vehicle. And 442 is actually in there. It's number 9 in the on my diagnostic trouble codes. So I went on and clicked that. And now you start seeing how the product presents itself. We've got, and I'm just going to follow this the way the technician would, just the way you described it. So we've got a 442. We had that other code, but we're not really worried about that right now. You start seeing here immediately in the SureTrack results that it seems that there's a lot of gas caps and evap sensors replaced for this. You can look over to the right of the SureTrack and see the fixed its, which are how many times other technicians have found that that particular component has resolved that problem. Just for the sake of showing you how it all works, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the search results, which takes us into the OE information, and then we can branch back out into SureTrack. So this presents to us the description from the OE's perspective of what it takes to set that code. You've got a tab there for procedures of diagnosing that code. You've got SureTrack, of course, which I'll click into next just to look at what that industry, the failure trends are. And we start seeing like gas cap is definitely the dominant culprit here. It tends to fail at what looks like about 150,000 miles. And then there's the other components as well, and you start seeing the trends there. But I want to show you kind of a power feature of SureTrack, or of ProDemand right now, which is this Pro View tab. And the reason I want to show you that is because of the multiple code scenario. ProView is another way of looking at information that we came up with. We launched it, I think, at Industry Week last year. And it looks a little interesting when you first view it, but what you're seeing is, again, we've drawn the P0442, which was our search into this, and you see the P0442 there on the left, as well as any combinations of codes that it's ever been associated with. So the 442 by itself has been associated with replacing the evap canisters, the vent solenoid, the purge solenoid valve, even the fuel pump from time to time. So you start seeing the possibilities, and then on the right part of that screen you see the probabilities based on how many of each of these things have been replaced. So again, it's kind of pointing to the gas cap. But what's interesting here is I think you said that you also had a P0155. Now, if I click on that combination of codes, so this is any repair order that's been introduced into our system that had both of those codes on it, it's interesting because, and I don't pretend to know all the reasons why, but historically, when those two codes have been evident, the oxygen sensor has been the culprit, which would not have been our first thing to look at. So that, but as a technician, that can take me down a path that could, stop that possible perceived comeback by identifying this, and so obviously we don't want to replace the oxygen sensor just because somebody else did, but it throws us in that direction, and very quickly we can then go back into SureTrack and look at the component test of how to test that oxygen sensor and validate whether that might be lazy, starting to just wear over time and things like that. So those are a couple of tools that we use in the ProDemand and ProView and SureTrack that can help our technician through the scenario that you described.
Well, thanks. That's a great explanation. It really looks good. I think we have time for one more scenario, and let's try this one. Again, let's say that I'm a tech who doesn't have a DTC. Let's say I have a symptom, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Ben, but I know OE information is usually not symptom-centric, but as a tech, sometimes that's what I have, right? So using the same vehicle, answer me this. What if all I know about it is that the engine stalls when I try to accelerate?
Well, that's a really great point, and thank you for putting me on the spot, because it's exactly how a technician thinks, right? And you're exactly right. OE information historically is very component centric, and I think the reason is that symptoms, as we know, it's difficult when you're designing a vehicle to try to predict what symptoms could ever cause a particular component to fail. Obviously, if a spark plug fails, you're going to have a misfire, but it's really difficult to try to think about what components are going to age in 60, 80, 100,000 miles, and what symptoms that might that may result from that. So first of all, I guess just as a time saver, one thing that's interesting is if you've got the vehicle identified in ProDemand, and right now we're still on our search screen with the P0442, I don't have to really go back to the home screen or back to my one search to start a new search. So let's say that now I just start over-typing the P0442 with engine stalls. Now, this is kind of a undocumented feature, kind of a power feature, and we're going to work to make this a little more apparent to our users. But as I start typing engine stalls, the type ahead help that presents itself is really designed around the components again. So you're not going to see engine stalls present itself. Well, I'm going to ignore all those proposals and just say type engine stalls and hit the enter key. And then you'll see another display here that kind of looks almost useless at first, and this is the OE information trying to resolve itself against engine stalls. And what really happens, just between all of us, is that it tries to find any OE article that has engine related to it, because it really doesn't understand engine stalls, because as you pointed out, OE information is not really symptom centric. But if you now scroll down to the SureTrack results, which is underneath this, you start seeing some very interesting information, Larry, like engine stalls replace fuel filter, fuel pump, replace fuel pump, fuel tank modules, things like that. And if I click in on one of those, again, even for a symptom, I can deliver a lot of useful information. And this is all coming from the industry information, but then that can point me back into a component that, if I believe that component, like if I want to replace the fuel filter or the fuel pump now, I can retype fuel filter into the search term and get back into the OE, how to replace it type information. So again, for engine stalls, I can identify the components that have been reported for being associated with that from actual field experience, and the mileage trends that those components tend to fail at. So that's kind of how we're dealing with symptoms today. Hope that helped.
Oh yeah, great explanation, Ben. In fact, at the top I said that efficiency really wasn't intuitive, but what you have presented today, really you can see that this is a very intuitive process. What you have going here. And if I can, I'm going to try to slip in one more question before I let you go, if that's all right. I've heard that ProDemand can be viewed on my iPad. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. Thanks for bringing that up. We've always been available on mobile platforms, but quite honestly, we realized last year that the experience wasn't really what we hoped it would be. And what happens is, of course, when you design something for a larger screen and a larger, typically more powerful processor that a Windows PC offers, you kind of get yourself wrapped around that, and you want to deliver the best experience you can. And what we were finding is that while we were functional on the mobile units, and when I say mobile, I'm really talking about like iPads and Android tablets and things like that, we found that as people are using the things that they're used to using, like the pinching the screen to zoom and compress and things like that, it really wasn't the experience that we thought was optimum. And we see the trend of technicians printing things less and carrying these little inexpensive tablets under the car with them, or under the hood, or in the passenger compartment more frequently. So we kind of gave ourselves a mantra last year that we needed to be available on whatever appropriate platform the technician should want to use us on. And that includes, of course, the legacy PCs, laptops, and desktops. That includes the iPads and Android tablets, and it includes our diagnostic tools that our other divisions sell. So we want to be there on, we don't want to force the technician to go to a certain type of an interface to use us. So at Industry Week last year, we also showed our first version of it's the same information, but now it's designed around that mobile experience. So we support now the things like the pinching the screen to zoom or to compress. We take advantage of the sometimes limited screen real estate. But as you start drilling into articles, we will optimize the real estate to give you the actual thing you're looking for instead of all the fluff around it. This screen is showing you that we support landscape and portrait modes. It'll reorganize itself depending on where you are. We have the same search results for SureTrack and OneSearch. And then as you start drilling into information, in this case I think I'm looking for conditions for setting the DTC, it'll expand that information to go full screen. So we've actually done a lot of work, and we continue to enhance this, but We are very friendly now with iPads and Android devices and things like that, and we expect to, that's kind of the direction we're going, is to support all of those interfaces. So thanks for asking.
Oh, sure. It looks like you guys have done, covered every base that you could possibly cover. In fact, I think it's fantastic. I'm kind of wondering what you might be doing for an encore. Things have really changed in the Bay, to make things much more efficient, and you guys obviously are way ahead of the curve on all of it. Ben, I know our viewers will want more information about what you've talked about today, so could you tell them how they can get more information from you guys?
Well, probably the easiest way is on our website, Mitchell1.com. There's a lot of information there. You can actually find sales reps if you want a live person to actually come and visit you. There's phone numbers you can call in to just get information from us directly. And if you are a ProDemand user, you'll note I didn't really talk about it, but on the right side of the screen of every screen in ProDemand is a little tab called feedback, and if you click on that, that's reviewed a few times a week by a variety of people, and we go through those feedback items to make sure that we're listening and meeting the needs of the users of the product. So a lot of ways to find us, and we hope you do.
Well, again, I think you guys have covered all the bases, no doubt about that. And Ben, I want to thank you for your time today and all the invaluable information that you have imparted. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry, and we are continuing to work on it. Sometimes we challenge ourselves with what's next, but well, my job depends on it, so we're going to keep doing things.
Well, great, thanks. And I'd like to thank our viewers as well for joining us today. So until next time, this is Larry Silvey with Motor Age.